And if you haven't done so yet, take a second to get your episode loaded and paused at the 0-second mark. And if you've been here before, you know what we're doing next. If you're new, grab your remote and have your thumb on the play button, but don't press it yet, because we're going to go do that at the same time on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
That's Mal.
Yes, it is.
Great job, Julie.
Yeah, that was
Thank you.
awesome.
And Mary, the pre-thing is done.
I already spoke to her. She's watching the way we are.
Thanks, Sherry.
What do you notice?
I was going to say I notice a floor, and now I notice Mal laying on it.
You're very observant.
The place was pretty empty. Junk.
I like that we could see kind of when they first walked on the ship kind of thing.
I'm already very sad.
Did you say very sad?
Did you see the blood drops?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My husband.
Yeah, I mean, Mal doesn't die though.
Maybe he had a breakdance competition and lost.
Maybe this is the aftermath of River doing cartwheels and backflips.
That's just him trying to do the worm really bad.
Okay. Listen.
They're so cute.
Ugh.
Sounds delicious, doesn't
Totally.
Sounds
Chocolate.
worse
Just like
than
a big,
mother's
it's
milk.
basically like a big, just a big bunch of smushed meat together.
Yeah, I'm thinking like chocolate
Yup.
meatloaf.
Oh, it could be like a plant-based protein.
Oh, right.
maybe it's tofu.
It's basically like a really big, thick power bar.
Sure. Chocolatey tasting.
Like a big tiger milk bar.
Did you notice River said fire before fire even came?
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Wow. Now all she needs is to do a couple backflips for me. Wait, what?
You can't open those doors until Mal's
There
done
was
doing what he's doing.
fire on both sides of the the lounge.
I mean, that CGI is pretty by today's standards is pretty like so obviously CGI. But man, I'm trying to imagine what that looked like in 2002, and that must have been absolutely awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, I thought it didn't look great back then as well, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't think it
Yeah,
looked
no.
very convincing back then either.
It reminded
I mean,
me of,
aside
like,
from the
Ten
fact that it's just a
Commandments
really
with-
cool, it's a cool idea. Just like all this fire like flowing through the ship and then out of a. I mean, they're just that idea is really powerful.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
the actual execution reminded me of the Ten Commandments, like the tornado fire with Charles Heston.
All right.
Yeah, it does.
All right. It didn't look that.
It looked okay on my non-HD TV that I had back then.
I liked it. Okay, I liked it, but I
I'm
also
glad
like,
you liked it.
I also like the fire tornado. That come out.
Screw you.
That was awesome. I mean, I have to be honest, that was awesome. The amount of emotion in there and the different stakes. Oh, right.
This is
Also,
a
just
great
the amount
mustache.
of mustache that's going on right now.
Right?
Yeah.
Can we all just marvel at the mustache?
Yeah, Alan wanted to do a lot worse, and this is what they ended up.
Oh wow, interesting. We saw that in Pulp Fiction for the first time, right?
Yup.
Yeah.
We saw that in Pulp
Oh.
Fiction for the first time, and then I feel like we started seeing it again throughout the decade, 2000s.
Yes, but have you seen them do it to themselves?
No, but I think we're gonna about to, or we just did, right?
Yeah, he just did it.
I'm very, very curious to find out what happens to this surfer mechanic. Whoa. Whoa. Whoa.
Nara's dress is so pretty.
Ooh, careful there, book. Don't breathe in too much. Ever since he mentioned that Zoe's taking up less oxygen, I've been like breathing a little bit slower just to see if I can conserve as much oxygen as possible throughout the episode.
I would immediately start to panic. She's very comforting.
Right? Thank you for that knowledge. Heather.
I kind of saw that coming.
What the hell are you doing?
I mean, again, like any character that walks in breathing hard, sighing, or anything, I'm like, chill.
They should talk
Stop
less.
breathing.
Kind of like how Jane had to be the voice of reason there.
It's repeating in both English and Chinese, so I'm not trained.
Your wish might come true, John.
All that's proper.
This guy.
That's their mechanic.
Anna Paquin? Oh. A recent episode, somebody said, "Oh, it's insinuated that she's slept with people," and I was like, "Really? I haven't really seen that." But there we go. I love this.
And now you know what happened to the surfer dude.
Bye-bye, Beth.
I also just this is so far my favorite episode for Mal. I think Mal is so interesting in this episode.
Understand?
Oh, Captain's the last one to leave the ship.
I was just thinking that myself.
Yeah, I was thinking about that cruise liner and that Italian cruise liner where the captain actually didn't do that and got in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, he was the
Maybe
first one
so.
off the ship.
He was the first one off.
What?
Exact opposite of what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, and she just said, Mal, it's not like olden times where the captain needs to go down with the ship, and he said she ain't got.
When was someone send me a message about this? I didn't.
It was
Oh,
a few
is this
years ago.
Yeah, it was a few years back.
It was like a cruise liner like off the coast of Africa, and it started to sink, and the captain was the first one off.
The captain ran it into some rocks off the coast, and so then it started to sink, and he left. And he left people on.
He got in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I bet. Wow.
she sounds way more formal.
Well, this is the day they met.
Yeah, it's cool. Well, there we go. That's very important information about their relationship. Interesting.
And that's the last time you get to call me whore. Sure.
But it is not.
Well, she also said you can't come in without my express permission, which we know he does all the time.
It's so cool, the difference in her tone now. I love it. So
Nathan loves that scene.
it's an awesome line.
Alan stole the button, and after the show had gotten canceled, he sent it to Joss and said, "If we get our miracle, call us all back."
Oh, that's sweet.
Really? Oh.
Yep.
I'm gonna be very interested when this episode's over to hear why it's Crystal's favorite. I kind of wonder if it's because we get to see all the introductions of them to each other. That's what I really like about this episode.
Yikes.
Did you take a deep breath when they showed the doors open?
Mal is so awesome. So good. Oh. Well, that's how he got it.
You hurt my boy. Crap.
I like that they did that because I've had problems in like standoff scenes in the past where guns start blazing and I just think, no way, like somebody's pointing a gun at you, like you know that they've got the upper hand and you just need to chill.
Yeah, I agree.
Like nobody else is gonna fire their weapon at him. It's like a split second and then that guy's dead, you know, and the guy knows that, everybody around him knows that.
Nathan has said though that he wished it was a slightly bigger gun that he was holding compared to what everyone else had in there.
I actually like that it's small because I think that it's as effective. The whole idea is I will kill you. I have not much to lose. I have a wound right now, and all I have to do is pull this trigger, and your head has a bullet in it. That's it. That's all that's necessary.
A gun is a gun. Yeah.
Gun is a gun. A bullet in that guy's head is the end of him, and he understands that, and all of his crew understands that, and they moved off the ship.
I like to think since it was a smaller gun that Kaylee or Nara stuck.
Or River.
Yeah.
I
That's
always imagine Wash, because he's the one who's usually driving. So I figured this was something he put there as a backup.
Yeah, I always figure there's stuff stashed all over the place.
All right, well, see, he didn't die. Unless this is like a total Joss Whedon trickaroo. I got like a fever dream as he's down. Something about the whole thing just feels a little weird.
you don't expect a happy ending.
I don't know. Why would they turn around? Why? I don't get it.
Zoe decided to because they weren't going
Zoe
to
woke
last
up.
long out there themselves. They don't have a lot of gas.
Zoe made a decision as next in charge kind of thing.
Yeah, I get it. I just don't understand the decision. It doesn't make sense.
No,
Why leave at all?
That
Why?
Well,
because
she didn't
because
have
he
any
was they were
input.
hoping that they'd be able to get far enough out to get to beacon somebody to get back over.
Hold
They
up real
figured
quick.
let's just
Zoe didn't have any input on the decision to leave. So when she woke up, she was like, hell no, bring us back. And there's when he first saw through it.
Hey.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure you saw that scene.
Yeah, don't worry. Don't worry. I put double headphones on. I was like, I'm not out of this.
That's one of my two favorite episodes of the series.
That episode was awesome. It was awesome. Although, okay, I get that. That makes a little bit more sense there, Mary. That like she wakes up and is like, "What the hell? No, turn around, please." But still, it's just it's kind of a strange thing. I mean, where were they going anyway?
They're
You
just
sent
out
them all-
on the edges.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just trying to
so
find anybody.
just in
to
case someone can help them. Yeah.
Just flying around.
Yeah, it's
Well,
basically
no,
like
sent
a
them
double
in
Hail
all-
they
Mary.
were originally heading to Greenleaf. They were just going at
To Greenland?
Greenleaf.
Oh, I was like, what?
In the beginning, he says they're going to Greenleaf, where we're staying under the radar, which is
Right.
why they got kind of screwed from when they broke down, because nobody could hear them. So he sent the shuttles out to try to go a little bit further out to try to get somebody to come back to fix the ship.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
And he
I-
sends each of the shuttle in opposite directions, so hoping that they would cover more quote
More
unquote,
ground, right? And then Zoe was like, turn around, man. We don't have that much gas. Like we're gonna just all die here in like the middle of,
Exactly.
of space. Like let's go back at the very least. Let's die on that freaking ship. Spread out a little bit. Jeez, it's so cramped in here. I want to die in this little tin can.
So, fun fact, this episode has the least amount of Zoe in it because it was written purposely to allow the actress to go and get married. This was her wedding.
Wow.
In real-
That's cool.
So can we have before Krista doesn't want to say anything because I know she's excited she came up. Krista, can you now tell us your reasons why this is your favorite episode?
I two reasons. I liked seeing the whole like beginning of how the characters, how they all came to be on the ship. And then also I just thought it was really interesting how they kind of had 3 timelines going at the same time. And I don't know, I just that's those are the reasons.
Awesome. Yeah, I really like how we get to see how Mel and Zoe knew each other from the war, but how they met the other people that
Right.
came onto the ship.
Yeah, they were all really great little introductions too. Like super interesting, really unexpected. I mean, I think that my favorite introduction was Inara's introduction, even though I would have before that said that Kaylee's introduction was my favorite, because that one was so completely unexpected. But I think the thing I loved so much about the Inara introduction was just how different she was then from how she is now, not just in terms of her interaction with Mal, but just her very like monotone, formal way of speaking, and just to see how, because she's always felt a little bit like different than the rest of the crew, right? She's always kind of felt a little bit more formal than everybody else, but to see how much more formal she was at the very beginning compared to how she is now tells you how much her time here on the ship has actually changed her and just sort of reshaped a little bit of her personality a bit, even if it's like still not like anywhere near, you know, the personality types of the other members of the ship, that it's just so far from where she was at the beginning.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. She was, but was she being that formal just because she's trying to wheel and deal with him?
It wasn't
Or
just
do
the
you think she was
formality.
always like,
It wasn't just the formality of it. It was also just her vocal pattern. Her vocal pattern was much more monotonous, like the way that she spoke. It was like it had like a monotony that seemed deliberate. And then you would cut from that scene to her talking to Mal, and her vocal pattern is totally colored. Like it's got all of these like inflections and whatnot. And I know that obviously that in that moment she's in a much more emotional state, but I think in general she's got more color variety to her vocal patterns than she did in that first scene. And that just sounds to me, it tells me that I mean, and this would make complete sense, that just her time around everyone, having dinners with everyone on a nightly basis, you know, that like this has sort of, you know, it sort of shaped her personality a bit.
I think you hear it, you hear that particular like vocal pattern that she uses in that scene with Mal whenever she is in companion mode, right? That is her guarded, that is her, you know, this is the illusion. And when she is with them, when she is with her family, you see the real her. I think it's less that they have changed her and more that she has opened up to them. And this is when you get to see the real Inara, is when she's with Mal and when she's with Kaylee. You know, because the vocal patterns are completely different. And you see it when she is like in companion
Well,
mode,
you
she's
see,
very like
you also see, but
calculating.
you also see it a little bit when she's at the table, at the dinner with them, and they're all joking, and she makes the joke to Jane. You know, so, but yeah, I can get behind that idea that that's really more who she is, and when she's in companion mode. But then I would also argue that, like, you know, being able to lower that guard down to be more like because I can't imagine that that's who she was at her first dinners with them. You know, like I am at, like, probably at their first dinner, she probably had a little bit more of the companion. It's not like once they shook and she officially was a, you know, crew member, that suddenly she just stopped doing that monotonous thing. Over time, she's lowered that in their in their settings, and for me, I think that that's, you know, to a degree, that's also like a little bit of a shift in. I mean, maybe that's not a bad way of saying it, that her personality has changed. I don't think that has changed, but that being around these people has changed her as it relates to them. How would we say that?
Nathan said about that that specific scene. He says, I have one moment that's not a lot of people mention, but the people that do, it gets them teary-eyed. It's a scene in Out of Gas at the end when I'm with Inara in her shuttle. She says, Mal, you don't have to die alone. And I say, everybody dies alone. That moment for me, and there's a beautiful shot at the end that a director came up with. To me, it strikes something in my heart. I know I am watching me up there, and I know that I'm watching Moreno. But in moments like that, I can only see Malcolm Reynolds and Inara Sarah. I felt so much for them. I feel so badly. It's a favorite.
I love that. I do agree with you, John, about, you know, like the crew and her being around them softening her, because even her wardrobe in that moment is black and very formal. She has the headpiece on, and Julie mentioned that beautiful peach dress she's wearing through this episode, you know, is very casual and informal. And even since throughout the show, even when she isn't in companion mode, she's colorful. She's not wearing that black with the head. You know what I mean? Like, I think we can see through the wardrobe in that scene also how much she's.
Mm-hmm. I'll be right back. I have to go do something really quick.
So Ron Glass said about the scene with the meal. The scene that they were supposed to be sitting around the table where we ate, it's supposed to open with everybody responding to a joke I told. So they were supposed to be laughing really, really hard. The first time we did it, they said action, and I started this laugh. And I started to look around and get everybody to join in, and they're all looking at me like I was nuts. Of course, it takes a moment to hit that it's a practical joke. It became clear that Nathan had told everybody, let's not laugh. That was really fun and funny. It helped to keep a certain kind of camaraderie and good spirits on the set. It's not in my nature. I'm not a practical joker. I could appreciate them, but I don't do that. Nathan was known to be like the biggest joker on the set.
I love this when they're all around the table together. It's just so homey and.
Well, they used to do that when, like, during off takes, they would stay around the kitchen or in the lounge area, and that's where they would hang out. They wouldn't go back to their dressing rooms. They would stay together and hang out. They really thought of each other as family.
Yeah, those are some of my favorite scenes too in all the episodes.
And Hunter, you liked this part. It says, on the last day of shooting Firefly, we were doing the final scene on the bridge, and it was really depressing. The red button had been put on after the bridge was built because it becomes out into the episode Out of Gas. It was only stuck on with tacky gum stuff that you hang pictures on the wall with. So I was like, I'll be damned if I'm not taking something. I tried to pull a couple of things off, but they were screwed on too tight. I grabbed hold of that button and it came off and was mine. We then had to come back onto the bridge to shoot one last time, so the button wasn't there. I held on to it for a few days going. I got this thing. And then Joss had given us all those speeches, and I thought it was such a perfect thing for him to have. Alan then sent the button to Joss And when the show was canceled, with a note saying, "When your miracle gets here, call us back."
Wow, that's super cool. That's super
So
cool.
I'm curious, did everybody have like a favorite like scene? Like John was saying, his favorite was Anara. Did anyone else have like a favorite like flashback scene? For me, it's probably, I think Kaylee's is probably my favorite of them.
Kaylee's my
Kaylee is
favorite.
definitely fun. Yeah, Bester.
I can imagine that to be the fan favorite. It's such an unexpected moment. It's also, like I was saying in that last episode, or one of our last episodes, where I was like, yeah, just Kaylee just doesn't seem like the type to be, to be really like into casual sex, and somebody was like, I don't know, it's been sort of implied that that she's slept with other men. And I was like really racking my brain, like, when? I mean, like I get that she's like not like your like refined lady of society, but I just, she just really mostly, I just thought of her as the kid on board the ship, and I mean, I'm imagining whoever said that last time must have been thinking about this scene, because I would never have expected her to be the woman that the surfer dude, I'm just gonna call that guy the surfer dude, was was having sex with.
Mine is the ship. Mine is the ship at the very end, because I feel like it's a summary of everything, where he went looking for one thing and found something totally different. And I feel like that's almost the case for everyone he met. So I find it like a very nice summary of all of his.
By the way, that that moment at the very end also had an interesting thing where the guy said to him about the ship that he was trying to sell him, like, if you take care of this, you'll have it for the rest of your life. And we've heard something similar about a Firefly class ship, right?
Yes,
But like,
we've heard it in another episode, but Mal does say it to Zoe when he's taking her through the ship. A ship like this will be with you to the day you die, and she goes, "That's because it's a death trap."
Right. But we've also heard it, like in another episode, somebody actually like really explaining how these ships are really resilient. They're just,
Yeah, it's
they're
an
like
our Mrs. Reynolds when they look at
Right.
the ship.
Yep.
and
they're
he's
like
"It'll-"
they're like cars in Cuba, like cars from the 50s that like they just can continue to just keep, like, cars earlier than a certain time, they just can run forever because you can just keep replacing the parts. Like today's cars, no, modern cars, like they have a lifespan. So this is kind of like, to me, I kind of see the Firefly class ship as like, kind of akin to
A Honda?
like, not a Honda. No,
My
not a
Honda has 292,000 miles on it.
I know,
It's a
but
2007.
yeah, I know, but
It's gone.
I know, but a Honda still at a certain point, because now modern cars have so many like computerized parts in them. Like at a certain point, they kind of it becomes not affordable to keep fixing them. Eventually, they die. Whereas like older cars, pre all of the like modern computerized cars, like you can just keep bubble gumming them together and like, finding parts and sawing things down and, and stuff, and the cars will just run forever.
We should
And
for sure have trucks like that on the farm.
Yeah, and that's to me is kind of what I'm imagining a Firefly is like.
Jane's intro was definitely the funniest, though.
Yeah.
Jane's is funny. Jane's is funny. I feel like I've seen that scene before. That kind of I mean, expertly
written and delivered for sure. But that's a trope I've seen before, where you know somebody is being persuaded to join, and the person is like using like this sort of reverse psychology type thing on them by pointing out all of the stuff that they're not getting. Like I feel like I've seen that before. I can't remember where, but it feels like a familiar trope. Whereas Kaylee's scene that seemed super fresh. Like I'd never seen anything like that.
I feel like that's a great intro for him though, because you kind of get that feeling from Jane. Like if someone else makes him a better offer, he's gonna dip out. So.
Oh yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was great. I mean, all of them were just such great intros to the character. The only one that I didn't really get like a deep enough sense for who they are from their scene, even though the mustache was very funny, but I didn't really get much from the wash scene. I didn't really get deep enough with the character, except what
they say is they talk about, Mel says how there are 3 other people who've been trying to get Wash for the longest time to join their crew, and it's Zoe still. I just don't like him, and it's funny because that's the one she winds up marrying.
Well, what does that
Right,
say?
but
Well,
what
what does
about
that
the
say
point of the
about
scene?
Zoe's instincts? To be honest.
That she already liked him.
I just want to.
Oh, interesting. I did
Could
not
just be
think
the
that.
mustache. She couldn't put a finger on it. It's that
Yeah. When you have such an adverse effect, to someone when you first meet them like that, like usually you're like, okay, damn it, I'm gonna fall.
Interesting.
It seems like the point of that seemed like all the rest of the scenes of the introductions of the characters kind of gives you insight into why Mal loves them, why they become his family. That is the only one where I don't see that. It's the only one where it feels like the point of the scene is to make a joke that Zoe doesn't like him, but then ends up being with him, marrying him. It just feels like a gag instead of an insight into his character and why he's special and should be part of the team.
See, I felt the opposite because it is the gag of Zoe not liking him and then they end up getting married. But the fact that Mal said all these other people have been trying to get him on their crew forever, but he falls in love with the Firefly, and the fact that Wash falls for the Firefly is what makes Mal like him more.
Yeah. So and I would agree with that, except that it doesn't happen through a conversation between the two of them. He's not even in the same room with him when they say that stuff. It's just told. It's not shown, right? If they were having a conversation and then he said something, they're like, oh wow, this dude who's seemingly a buffoon actually is amazing at what he does. Then I feel like, oh, there's my insight into why he's special, as opposed to Mal being in another room saying, oh, all these other people say he's amazing. You know what I mean? Whereas everybody else, it was through a conversation between Mal and that person.
Right. Yeah, I understand that, but I just thought it was because he picked them, he picked that ship to be on, so that's why Mal respects him. But I understand what
And I kind of like how. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm gonna change the subject, so please.
Okay, I kind of think that with Wash coming out from under the instrument panel, he wasn't just in taking a peek around, he was really getting a feel for the ship. So I think that kind of leads into where they were trying to go with his character.
kind of like with Zoe too. She said, I noticed it down here earlier, but she saw what was wrong underneath there and was she was in a compromising position probably, but she saw what was wrong with the ship and knew exactly how to fix it. And, like you said, Wash was under the instrument board, and he wasn't even paying attention to them really. He was just looking around the ship, and I think that's why he fits.
And I love that Kaylee is all instinct. Mal says to her, where did you learn about this stuff? And she's like, I just know. She just completely has the knowledge of what needs to be done with this ship, and that's all that it needs from her.
Maybe I'm off base on this, but my sense from Mal in that moment, and I got the sense from him throughout the episode, you know, this was my favorite Mal episode, mostly because of moments like that. Like I just loved, I mean, yeah, I loved that scene between him and Inara, and that line was really, I thought that was a really, like, you know, powerful, very emotional line. But mostly the stuff that I liked from Mal was the no nonsense stuff, right? Like I loved that moment when Wash is like, you know, I'm not leaving her side, and he's like, I'm not, he's like, don't ask me to leave the side, and he's like, I'm not asking, I'm telling you. And even though he knows Wash is totally freaking out and scared about Zoe, still grabs him, like just throws him against the wall. You know, for Mal, it's like, we have work to do. And that moment with Kaylee, I felt the same way about it. I mean, I felt like he's at his wit's end right now. He's dying to get up into the air. He has no options because he needs the engineer to get them up into the air, and it is just not happening. And this happens, and he's like, it's not even about whether or not she can do it or whatnot, like, you know, whether she has instinct. It's literally like, I need an engineer. This guy is not an engineer. We need to go. There was a part of me that felt like he would have been ready to, if he discovered in like a couple of days that Kaylee couldn't cut it, he'd be like, great, well, at least we're up in the air. We can get to a planet. I can get a new engineer.
Yeah, that guy was a mechanic and Kaylee is an engineer. Like, they're on different.
But I mean, I don't know if but I'm suggesting that I don't necessarily know that Mal like knew she was an engineer, or that he knew somehow instinctively that she could cut it. I think that he was just thinking in the moment, she can do it. Let me get her on. I am dying to get off this rock, and I gotta go. We gotta go. Okay, great. You can do it. Let's do it. You know, and that would suggest that over time he came to realize her great gifted ability, you know. But like, you know, somebody tells you like, my dad tells me I'm gifted, like, I mean, you know, come on, that like I need proof. I need to be able to see.
But he also says you can stay how long? As long as you can keep her in the air.
Right, exactly. As long as you can keep her in the air. Yeah. And that to me it is more in line with the Mal that we see in this episode, which is like no romance, you know, he's not giving in to any romance and any feels. He is no nonsense. I am the captain of the ship. My job is to get this up in the air. My job is to keep you safe. You know, like that's all he's focused on.
Do we think?
And I appreciate that.
If something happened and Kaylee wasn't able to fix a ship when it's docked somewhere and someone else came on and they were able to fix it, do we think that Mal would kick her off? And
well, at this point, no.
No?
Well, I think at this point, no, because I think at this point, well, first of all, I just can't imagine that ever happening. But at this point, because we know that she's that gifted, but I don't think that at this point he would sell out any of his family. But at that stage of their relationship, she's not family. And I think that if they got up into the air and he suddenly realized she actually can't cut it, yeah, he'd definitely 100% drop her off at the next planet, get a new mechanic on. Definitely.
I think it's really interesting that she does say, sorry, I can't do anything. Like, she's out of options, and you can see how sad she is. And I feel like it's really interesting that you know, he's not going to kick her off the ship. Whereas, you know, back in time, maybe that would have been the case. But like, I feel like she definitely does approach the situation like, I failed you and I'm failing the ship, you know, but like his demeanor is completely different than what we would expect from, you know, from the previous Mal, right? So, and I think that's what the whole episode is doing, is showing like how these people have all changed him. Like they, you know, they've all like, I think in each instance he's kind of gone back on what you thought he might have done in a particular situation with all of these characters, because now they've been through it together, and now that, you know, the shit really is hitting the fan, and he is treating them like family, whereas, you know, before he might not have. And I think that's really interesting. I really like that. Like, you see the passage of time in the relationships, not, you know, as well as the actual time, but you see like how, you know, he's really changed and softened to all of them. You know, when these situations arise that might have actually gotten them kicked off in the past.
Yeah,
Well,
and
I
I mean, I think that's largely because they're family now.
Catalyzer issue, though. If you looked at the catalyzer was completely disformed and blown apart. There was nothing that she could have done to that thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, for sure. And probably any other mechanic that he had on there, even if he'd had him for a week, he would probably have been like, okay, fair enough. But I think that like what the narrative is trying to tell you is something very similar to what is essentially what Diana's saying, which is like he trusts this family now. You know, early on, he was just getting to know people, and he didn't have an emotional connection to anybody.
So can I ask I'm gonna change this topic slightly. I hope that's okay.
Of course.
In the past, there's been a couple of times where you mentioned, John, that they're trying to set up the possibility that Jane will betray Mal, and you know that's a red herring and you're not gonna fall for it.
No.
Does it change your perspective now that you know that Jane came by betraying another team?
No, it doesn't. Not at all. And the reason why is because the person that we are presented with the person that he betrays is presented as a total, like, weaselly, no morals, no values person. And we've gotten to know Mal to be nothing like that guy. And it's just mostly my lack of any fear of that happening is that, you know, Mal's the protagonist and we're supposed to like him. And in order for us to buy the idea that Jane would betray him, truly betray him, where not like I'm betraying him, then by a certain point in the episode, all of a sudden the Millennium Falcon flies back and ends up like joining the fight, you know, like not like a fake out betrayal, right? A true betrayal where Jane suddenly goes to the other side in this story, not a chance, not gonna happen.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
would say
I thought you might fall for it, considering their back.
No way. I mean, really, like, does anybody think that it's possible that Jane could actually switch sides in this show and become a villain to our protagonist? Anybody?
Oh no, I think actually that that whole sequence with Jane's origin into like how he got on the Firefly actually retroactively makes that scene, that red herring scene where he's like, oh, he didn't offer enough, and oh, what happened if somebody does? So that'd be an interesting day. Like that whole thing, it puts that into perspective just how much Jane respects Mal as opposed to how much he didn't respect that other guy.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it really isn't about the money. He's putting on airs because that's like kind of the, that's his persona. That's who he claims to be. But deep down inside, I think you can tell just how much he respects Mao and like kind of seeks his approval.
For sure. Also, I think that what we saw today will make it way more powerful when we see moments going forward where Jane is put in a similar situation and he chooses to stay on the Firefly. Like, that's the reason narratively why that exists.
Also, Harvest is open.
So has this now become your favorite episode? Or is it still
It is my favorite episode. I was like, I kind of went in like it's everybody's favorite episode, and I wanted to be kind of like, well, I get it,
It's really, really good.
but like no, it's definitely the best episode so far. But I did go in hoping that I could be cool and different. I failed miserably.
I'm not surprised though. Because it's a lot of people's favorites. It's up there for me.
I
was gonna say,
mean, Krista actually mentioned something that I hadn't even really thought about, which just makes it so cool, is that there are 3 timelines that are being woven through simultaneously. That's cool. That you rarely ever see in, I mean, the flashback thing, it's like, that's like a dime a dozen, that like you're really like flashbacks. I mean, I'm watching this new show, Yellow Jackets, which by the way is very good, but really intense. But and it's great, but it's using that convention, which has become like the hot convention. I mean, when I think that in like 200 years, people look back at this era of storytelling, the like flashback thing is going to be like, it's going to have a name, and it's going to be like, oh, at this period in humanity, like fiction had this flashback thing going on. Really, really common, but uncommon is three of them happening simultaneously.
Well,
and in a way that's done well.
And I like that the two meet, like the middle flashback and the current time meet, and you see the meeting of it, and then you get to go forward in the story from there. I really like that.
Totally.
The first time I saw it, the second I saw Mal's blood, the tears started falling, and I'm like, they better not kill him off. I will never watch the rest of this show.
I can't imagine it. I mean, I didn't cry because I was like, no way.
I just want to point out, Joss has a horrible reputation for killing his main characters. So just keep that in mind as you watch.
Yeah, I get it, but I'm not particularly worried. I'm more worried that I'm not going to get to see a windmill, a head spin, a backflip, or a cartwheel.
I want River to have a scene where she's just in like 80s street look.
Did you like how she completely turned around to Book and said that you're not going to die from suffocation, you'll freeze to death first?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, she's a very weird one.
So earlier somebody pointed out that she called out fire before the fire happened. And there have been in the past episodes where she's kind of reacted to something that's going to happen before it happens, but it's not quite as clear that that's what she's doing all the time. It just looks like she's being kind of crazy, but really she is sensing or noticing something before it actually does happen. And this episode kind of just shows you that because she says fire, fire. And so you
Well, you
sort
know,
of said something about it.
do you want to know
Some
what?
other people-
Do you want to know
Yeah, go
what
ahead.
else? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I was just gonna ask what those of you who haven't seen this before think about that, because I can't remember who pointed out that she said that during the episode.
Krista
but
said
somebody
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. You want to know what else? You want to know what else clairvoyance can be good for? Anticipating a punch.
Cartwheels?
No, anticipating a punch, anticipating a kick, anticipating a gun being pulled out.
You are
Just saying.
leaning into this.
He's
I'm
completely
just.
leaned in.
What's up?
You've completely leaned in. But if we, even when she realized that Book was shot and she was nowhere near him, she was miles away.
I'm just saying that it can come in real handy, and I'm not joking here. I know I've been making jokes about the whole fighting thing, making light of it, but I'm not joking when I say the ability to see into the future. Obviously, in its like grandest sense, you can say like, oh yeah, she can sort of sense when something's bad's going to happen, like the fire happening or somebody getting hurt or whatnot. But at the micro level, that comes in real handy in sensing and anticipating something that's going to happen 2 seconds from you, including all of your opponent's moves in a fight. Excuse me.
Like Alice in Twilight.
I don't know.
I was
Twilight.
just thinking that same
I was
thing.
thinking,
I don't know Twilight. Are we gonna do a Twilight watch?
Please no.
Yes. Yes, why not?
I don't know. I was thinking about that. So Raven, that's my frame of reference where she sees the future before it's like happening. No one Disney Channel. Okay, never mind.
Oh, I know what you're talking
Of
about. I
course.
just didn't.
I don't know.
I'm too old for.
Oh, I am
know
too.
that's so Raven.
But yeah.
There is no such thing as too old for anything Disney.
Oh no,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Agreed.
Raven was. I'm too old for that.
Nope. I have a true pan complex. Disney all the way.
100%. I will host an entire watch of Hannah Montana if you guys want me to.
My daughter and son would probably watch it with you every single time.
Next.
I can get into Disney.
Was there anything about the episode you didn't like though, out of curiosity?
Yes. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. I kind of said it in the moment. I'm not really crazy about the ending.
How it all kind of ended up okay, just all of a sudden.
Yep.
You mean that it wasn't a dream sequence that they happened to just show back?
Yeah. I mean, it didn't need to be a dream sequence. If it had been a dream sequence, like as he's dying, I would have respected that. But it just it just felt kind of rushed, like kind of wrapped it up really quick. Like, oh, like it just, yeah, no, I wasn't. I didn't dig it.
I agree with that. I didn't like it either. But the thing I did like about the ending is that he looks over to Zoe and Zoe looks over to him, and it's kind of like juxtaposed with the way that flashbacks where they're the only two on the ship, and they're the two trying to find a crew. It was kind of a nice like full circle moment between the two of them. So that
Right.
part I like.
Yeah, that's true. I also will say that while it made for an absolutely thrilling episode, the inciting incident did just kind of come out of nowhere. And I would have liked for it to have actually been tied to the narrative in some way. I wish that there had been.
It didn't. In fact, it goes all the way back to the pilot. Kaylee has been complaining about that piece of the engine since they touched down in Persephone the very first time in the pilot. And she's mentioned it 2 or 3 times since then.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing as being tied to the narrative. I get that. I get that like it's something that has been referenced early. But for me, I feel like an inciting incident is really great when there's actual like cause and effect that happens within the story. And I guess maybe you could argue like the cause and effect is like cause in many episodes ago they could have fixed this but they didn't, which is kind of by the way, passive. I would consider that to be a sort of a passive cause to the effect, which also is not really the greatest in narratives. But for the purpose of this episode, which is really the self-contained story, I would have liked to have seen something more active that led to even indirectly that led to that inciting incident. And it just, because it just happened out of nowhere, like it felt manufactured. It's a bit of a nitpick because, you know, I loved the episode. I loved everything that it did to the episode. And I enjoyed the thrill of the moment, all of that. But it's just one little thing that like, you know, doesn't make it like a perfectly executed moment. I mean, whatever perfectly executed even means. I'm just saying, like, it just didn't. It didn't feel right. I feel like I've seen other narrative that like where the cause and effect was even there at the beginning in the first act before the inciting incident, that there's something that like takes us in there rather than just this like just sort of it happens type thing.
Right. If they had like said something like they had gotten some sort of signal stating that Serenity was like back online and that's why they came back, would that have made a difference?
Oh, well, I'm talking about the inciting incident, the actual explosion at the very beginning. But
Right.
but if that had happened, if they had shown us that scene in the ship in the pod, where suddenly they get like something that says it's online again, then I probably wouldn't have as big of a deal with it. You know, I mean, that wrap up just for me mostly. My problem was it just kind of. And it's television, so they only have a certain amount of time. So you know, I can kind of forgive that, but it just felt rushed.
Yeah,
Maui, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I think I have more of a problem with the end than the opening. You know, just because I give it leeway since it is a story told out of order. And I kind of think they use that to pretty great effect as like, you know, you start to understand, you know, what happened. I really kind of dig that. But the ending is like, okay, well, we showed you all the intros, like he got the piece. Now we just need to wrap it up. And so it's just very abrupt. And that is so I do agree with you on that ending, John. But the rest of it, you know, I actually, like I said, this is one of my 2 favorite episodes. You have not seen my other favorite episode yet, but yeah, I love this episode. Besides that,
Maui, how much did you love the fire tornado that flew through the ship?
I love like that, like how it happened. Like I said, I just don't find the special effect very believable. It looks really silly, because they had like no budget on the show. But I'm still impressed with what they were able to do. Like with very little money, they managed to make a lot of it look engaging. That's probably the worst special effect in the entire show.
Everything that I've read says that the show had for the time and for the network had actually a pretty high budget. I mean, high, of course, against a blockbuster movie that would have done that effect infinitely better. Obviously, it wasn't getting that kind of budget, but but everything I was reading was saying that like part of the actual part of what contributed to the network canceling it was that it was also a costly show that they, you know, compared to other shows that they had on the network at the time.
I was just gonna ask Shelly or Carol.
Wait,
I
wasn't
Carol seems
Hunter?
more,
Wait, hold on one second. I thought that Hunter was going to say something next.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris.
Oh no, I was gonna.
I was gonna ask if somebody else who hasn't seen it, what they were thinking, because they're kind of quiet over there.
Sorry, I only half watched because I'm baking for Thanksgiving. I'm making some pies, so I like kind of watched and mostly just listened.
Pies plural.
Yes, I made some custards in some little mason jars, and I'm making a maple sugar pie, and there's a pumpkin pie in the oven.
Yum.
So when
Sounds
are we
delicious.
eating? Like, when do we come over exactly? What's the time?
Okay, let's see. If you come over tomorrow, they'll be all done and cooled and ready to eat. So come on over. I'll send you the address.
So
Hunter, were you gonna say something?
I was gonna just say, like, to your comment about, you know, the passive problem and then the ending of it, it feels like a one-off episode, and that was kind of my issue with a bunch of the episodes of Battlestar Galactica. I don't like when there's just an isolated episode that doesn't really do much to move the plot of the overall show forward. You know, like they could, like, this is a great show and very well done, but we could take this episode out and it would have no effect on anything else that happens.
Oh, I would actually argue that a bunch of them have been like that. Like, one takeaway that I have from the show so far is that the show doesn't really feel like it has any real strong narrative through line between the episodes. We've got a couple of like mysteries that we have learned about, certain things that, and certain people that we, you know, may want to find out more about, right? Like, we know that Book's got some sort of secret, you know, with the Alliance. We know that River had this backstory with the Alliance and that her and her brother are fugitives, but none of those things are really have been for several episodes in any way like woven into the plot of the actual episode. The episodes seem to be always about, like, you know, we need to get one thing to keep us going, you know, we've got a job that we have to do. And, you know, if you learn any more about those little bits that are kind of the through line, they're just like little pieces of information. But it's not like modern television where like the episode would mostly be focused on, we need to get away from the Alliance, they're on our trail, they're trying to get River, you know, like that would be our main focus. Whereas this show feels like, hey, we're just coming along, we're part of the crew of this, you know, of this Firefly ship, this group of smugglers, this group of, you know, hustlers, and that's our thing. They just happen to have a few real kind of dangerous given circumstances.
I feel
Right.
like
I would say that, like, that's kind of, I mean, I don't like, and I totally agree with that. I just feel like this episode in particular didn't touch on any of those plot lines at all whatsoever. And we know that John, well, I mean, it's kind of what he does with Buffy. Like, I don't want to spoil anything, but like, you know, you have like these one-off things and like some plots, you're like, okay, what's gonna happen with here? What's gonna happen there? And you don't get those until later. So I feel like he was kind of following the same like legwork that he did in the other series that he did, where you get bits and pieces of it and you have to wait to see what happens in later seasons. But
Right. It sounds to me, from what I gather from Buffy, from what I've heard, because I've watched the first season of Buffy, and it felt similar in that it didn't really feel like there was much of a real strong narrative through line. It was just like spending time with a vampire slayer, you know, in school, doing these things. And
and from what I've heard is that the story gets extremely focused in later seasons. So my thought here is that this season was designed in the same way. We're going to get to know these characters. We're going to, spend time with them as if we're part of their crew. And then it's not going to be until later seasons that it becomes this like driving narrative, the way that, this soap opera really, that that kind of keeps us from one episode to the other.
It very much, that's very much Whedon's MO in all of his shows. He spends the bulk of the first season setting up all the pieces on the board.
Yeah, for like
right?
season
So, like,
5.
Scene,
Yeah.
right. But also, I think that I love this kind of episode in this kind of like long form storytelling format, when the narrative stops for a second and lets us just laser focus in on characterization instead. And I think that is why this is one of my favorite episodes, because I want to learn about these people, because like this is the episode that doesn't necessarily make you care about the narrative, but it makes you care about the characters more, which is going to make you invest so much more in the narrative, because now you care about what's going to happen next to these people. You care so much more about their relationship dynamics and whatnot, because you're getting so much more information on them. Similarly to like shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, like whenever they like stop the narrative and just say like, let's just sit with these characters and live with them for a bit and learn about who they are, what makes them tick. And it makes it so much more powerful when you get to that season finale and the big thing happens.
Well, I lost it that a little bit, John.
I agree.
Yeah, like I definitely, I liked the episode when it came out, but I definitely appreciate it more on rewatch, since the show didn't pan out. Like, like it feels bittersweet to get to know these characters, knowing that it's done and they haven't come back.
It's a bummer to think that there were, in another alternate reality, that there were other seasons, like further seasons, and a driving narrative, and we don't know what that would have been.
But now, do you see why I say that there's more character development in the 14 episodes than some shows have for years?
Certainly, because by that, like using that method of saying like my whole first season is not going to be like presented like a soap opera. It's going to be presented as like every episode is just a little contained story, and a time for you to spend as crew on this ship, and you're going to learn some little bits of information, including some, kind of dangerous given circumstances. Like in a series like that, all you have is character. Like that's all your first season has to actually make it interesting at all, is to rely on character.
But correct me if I'm wrong, was this not the contemporary style of storytelling at the time? Because I know there's lots of people.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
Yeah.
You're correct. I mean, it's very similar actually to the way X-Files was written. Like, the first season of X-Files, X-Files doesn't really get its like real driving narrative until later seasons. The first season is very much like, every episode's its own little thing, and and we learn little bits and pieces of the characters that like kind of thread together, but they're not really threading together in any sort of story. And it's not until later seasons that that like every episode is almost like a continuation in some way, narrative continuation of that. That was very much the style of storytelling through the 90s and into the early 2000s. And like Lost was probably the first big show, and also a lot of the stuff that was happening on HBO with like Sopranos and Oz, that like that started to move the trend towards what we have today, which is all shows begin like on the first episode of the show. You need to start watching because the entire show is a driving narrative.
Yeah, I'd say these are like the proto form, like like the Fireflies, the X-Files, are the kind of the proto forms of what became like the Losts of the world, for sure. Yeah, I kind of love that format, especially in shows where, like, the first 15, 16 episodes feel fairly standalone, and then all of a sudden people start coming back, and then by the time you get to like season 2 or season 3, every episode has a previously on that references something that happened like 30 episodes ago, because like, oh, we're going back to this thread. Cool.
Fringe like that too. Fringe, especially especially if you watch the whole thing and then go back to the beginning, you realize there's tons of Easter eggs. But at first, when you're first watching it, it seems like season 1 is mostly like standalone episodes. But then it really ramps up like the end of season 1 into season 2.
Was Alias like that?
Yep.
Alias was also kind of a little bit more standalone episodes, and then becomes like a real, like, like every episode is previously on.
Yeah,
What's that?
yes and no. The network wanted them to be a little bit less serial so they could syndicate it more. So I think they kind of went that way, but they go back to things from season 1 in later seasons. So you could watch some of them on your own, but if you really want to know, there was an underlying story.
Yeah, there was.
Through it all, that threaded it all together, at least the first 3 seasons for sure.
Yeah, and then as soon as they became like a huge hit and they had more leeway, then it focuses in and becomes more serialized.
It was there, but you could probably skip some and still catch it in the end, kind of thing. Veronica Mars was one of those shows that seemed like they were standalone episodes, but really the season 1 was a major story that went from episode 1 to the end like that. But if you didn't know that, you just watched an episode, they look like self-contained episodes.
Very cool.
And really, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is like that. You can watch just an episode and there's always some kind of self-contained thing happening in it, but there's still a major story arc that's going through the whole season and multiple seasons and stuff.